So you just got cut off when you were going on a date and you were wearing Victoria's Secret underwear. What
Yeah.
happened next?
Yeah. So I got the juicy written on the back of my booty shorts, and I thought this would really impress my date. But yeah, she was wearing it's a common name, common lotion scent. But so every time we'd be getting down, this is like what I'm smelling. So now I associate that anytime I smell it, like it arouses me still to this day. So I was conditioned from that scent.
Do you think you can be pheromonally scarred from previous relationships? Like if a relationship goes south and you end a relationship, but you're extremely sort of well adapted and matched to a certain blood type and pheromonal output, and then that lingers with you. Do you think that can kind of subconsciously affect the way that you handle future relationships?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, dude, I think little things like that, I don't think we have free will. I think everything we have is nudged by those little things from our past that influence us that we're probably not conscious of. So I don't know at what level, but they're definitely acting on every decision we make and how we perceive every bit of data and information that comes into us in a situation. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
No,
definitely.
I'm totally. I mean, from my experience, I'm totally on board with that as well. And it's just, you can have the kind of the best intentions when it comes to a match on paper, or some dates or whatever. But when it comes to sort of being intimate, it can simply not work. And all the other sort of the cards seem to be in order, but when it comes to that pheromonal thing, it just it seems to either work or it doesn't work. And I think it's something very deeply, sort of deep within our DNA. It's like the deep levels of our sort of primitive brain stem, if you like, that are attracted to certain people and not.
Yeah, dude, definitely. Because think about it,
We've got a couple of people, Ben's agreeing there, Michelle, Melissa. We've got a few people agreeing with the smell, with the scent as well.
because think of this. So we have our nervous system, which has been around for millions of years. We have our brain, which is even more recent, our prefrontal cortex, our mind, what we think is making decisions is so recent. Our emotions and these small triggers and our gut feeling and, these things that we can't explain on paper, like, oh, this will make
Mm.
sense. This person's perfect. But when we get that vibe, that's that whole, Jonathan Haidt calls it the rider and the elephant. That unconscious, that emotional limbic system is the elephant. You trying to rationalize things are as a small rider, and you're not controlling that
Yeah.
beast. So, yeah, I think, to be honest, I think we know this too as a fact. These are the things that are controlling our decisions and how we feel about other people.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion about there's a lot of these kind of sort of a priori sort of chemical structures deep within our psychology and with our DNA that are, in a way, they don't predetermine what's going to be the outcome in a way, as opposed to complete free will. But the choice factor comes into play when it comes to maybe awareness of what choice we have over those deeply ingrained kind of subconscious physiological underlying psychological foundations or frameworks that we have as people. That didn't make a lot of fucking sense. But what I'm saying is that we can
No,
actually be a little bit more cognizant or a little bit more aware of the choices that we make, but not in the fact that we have complete free will over the outcome of every situation. That's probably what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I agree. So how I think about it is, you so in a sense, you're passenger to your nervous system, because it's gaining information and sensory input, afferent input, and then based on the past, based on conditioning, based on all these things, it's shifting you into a certain mode, and you're perceiving what you're seeing in a certain way. So I think, what we do have control of is which is a practice and training, is awareness. So being aware that, whoa, I've shifted, whoa, I'm shifting, maybe, and then maybe you start to put two and two together, like this stimulus, I'm perceiving it a certain way, it's making me feel a certain way. Maybe you can interrogate, why is that? Maybe you can say, maybe I want to shift my nervous system back in the opposite direction. Maybe you start to see these triggers, these cues in the environment. Really, it's just observation and awareness and sensitivity that comes first. And then maybe there's an action you could do to get out of it, or maybe, you start to flow within that. So yeah, I do think there is hopefully some room for free will and agency. Like this cat, I see the cat, it makes me feel warm inside, and I want to pet it.
Have you read Jonathan Haidt's? He was on Rogan last week, actually. He's written this interesting book called The Happiness Hypothesis.
Yeah.
He uses quite an interesting metaphor of the rider and the elephant. And I think that was quite an interesting sort of a free will determinism kind of a metaphor, or if you like, of the elephant being the kind of this massive like iceberg under the water of our evolutionary foundation that is kind of rolling around beneath the surface, and we're this little kind of teeny weeny little rider on the top who's complaining about virtual signaling and social conditioning and things. But the elephant is actually, so what we're trying to do is we're not trying to control the fucking elephant, but we're just trying to kind of hold on to the reins and listen for the signals in a way. And those signals, they can be very deeply they can be very profound the more that we listen to them. And that can be the nervous system, via the nervous system, through this elephant running up to us as the kind of the control center versus the controller. So it's not really about free will or free will being based upon, determined by social conditioning, all that bullshit. It's about just listening to those signals. The deeper that we can listen to those signals, the more that we can kind of ride the waves, if you like, of the elephant.
Yeah, and I think we can, as the writer part of us, can start to see, well, this stimulus or this thing in the environment is causing the elephant to do this. And then you're not gonna like yank the elephant back, but you could start to put together what is pushing and what's triggering the elephant to do certain things. And yeah, it's a great book, by the way.
Yeah, he's written a couple of good books, actually. His latest book as well. Gabina just says here, quite a good point. With enough practice, you can have a clearer awareness of the changes in perspective, thoughts, or emotions. You can learn to understand the game and the players, but ultimately you're still a spectator. So yeah, I mean, you're right in a way that awareness is basically the ability to be able to have a different perspective on the way that elephant, the way that you actually view that elephant. So the elephant doesn't need to be this completely cumbersome sort of monstrosity, but deep within our our DNA that is really hindering us, but it can be used for our benefit as well. We can look at our entire sort of ancestry through our DNA as being something that is so magical and so perfect in a way to get us to this point, this place in time, that we can actually sort of harness that to our benefit. And that could be a simple perspective change, right?
Dude, I've been playing with interrogating the elephant lately. Um, so I'm someone who, you know, if I'm something might happen in a day. Usually it's something to do with another person, and it like triggers something in me, and I'll usually have a whole day where I'm like not in a good mood. You know, everything else kind of goes to shit, our quality goes down because that's in the back of my mind. So what I've been doing now is I feel it come up, and what I do is I just ask questions, and I say,
Mm.
why are you feeling like this? Instead of trying to change it too, or like breathe it out, or suppress it, or whatever it is. I'll just ask questions, and then pretty soon when I get to the root of it, it's such a ridiculous answer that I don't even have to ask anymore, and it's like I can be okay with it. I did this in a float tank, actually, my last float tank session. I was doing like a psilocybin previously, but this one I did edibles, cannabis, and that just like blasted, like the voice in my head became very loud, very clear. So I spent the whole time just asking it questions, and seeing what the response was, and it was man, very productive session. So now, instead of having things happen to me and me trying to reverse how I feel or make excuses or judgments or numb me out of it, all I do is I look right at it and I ask questions to get to the root of it. And it's been a good practice. I don't know if that made any
Yeah,
sense.
nice.
Did I
No,
sound crazy, Tom?
no. It's an interesting exercise to do, and it's like the exercise, the exercise of the headless way that I like to use as well. As always, when I have this sort of excessive rumination going on in my mind, which I do, I find myself being very top heavy. When I'm not sort of specifically doing my body work, I'm very much in my mind, and it seems to be this often this sort of either or kind of space that I'm operating in. But I often ask myself the question, who is it that is actually doing this looking or doing this assessment or rumination? Who is it that is actually a simple question like who is it that is doing this? And I've of course always have the same answer that there is no me that I can actually pin down to actually being this person who is creating all this rumination. It's just a sense of it's like it's this perceived sense of rumination, and then it can just immediately in an instant it can just like bang, it can just dissipate, right? And then I can
Mhm.
completely change my perspective of who and what I am and where I'm at, and where I'm going, and what I'm mulling over, or am I stressed, am I depressed, am I anxious, whatever it is, because that mood can immediately just be sort of seen for what it is, which is really just this kind of cloud that's just passing by. And it's just a kind of a little hack that I do to, as someone who's excessively in their head, well, not excessively, but just, quite often in my head. Um, I can just ask myself that question, like, where does the sense of self lie? And it doesn't really lie anywhere in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I kept asking. Um, and yeah, you're not going to find it anywhere. All that's really there at the end, is awareness. That's as far as I got. But
Yeah.
it is interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
and then you can ask yourself from that. It's like, well, okay, fuck, I'm not ever going to find this fucking sense of self. So it's awareness. So then it becomes, well, then I'll just choose a perspective on this awareness. So then we can
yeah,
choose complete emptiness. We can choose complete emptiness. Or we can choose the fact that we can be the capacity to actually be the world ourselves. We can actually be the capacity of the universe. And this is obviously the very much this sort of the psychedelic me, sense of me speaking here, but it's actually not necessarily when you actually take psychedelics. It's actually a psychedelic revelation in itself that you can actually do yourself. Listen to this, you can actually do that yourself. Say, well, where's my
Well,
head? I'm only looking at you. I'm only looking at the sense of me through this mirror. You are giving me this kind of confirmation that there is a me, but I can't fucking see myself.
yeah, yeah. Because if you think about it, where is your head? And you touch it, and you think for some reason you're inside your head, but this world and everything around you is a hallucination or production created inside your brain, including your head. So then you think all of this shit, the whole universe is inside your head. But then you think the head you're imagining that the universe is in is also a conception inside your head. So there's another layer, and it goes on forever. It's crazy shit. But
It does.
dude, we're talking about psychedelics. And what's funny is I heard this, like, I've heard the philosophy, I guess you can call it, of, question who is the one asking, and you'll discover all this blah blah blah. So I heard this from like 10 years ago. I remember reading like Osho, and then like Eckhart Tolle, and all these people saying this, and I would like meditate, and it would be more of a conceptual questioning. But on psychedelics, and even in this last float tank with edibles, it's a very felt experience. It's different for me than trying to think my way through it, if that makes sense. Especially
Mm-mm.
on psychedelics, it's the same thing, but it's like, it's not now I know it. It's like, oh, now I understand it. So it's interesting how maybe there's different paths, but the psychedelic path, I think, goes right to the root of where all these mystics and religions and everyone else is talking about. And maybe other people can get there from a different route, but man, psychedelics is a great, I don't know, what do you think
Yeah,
about that, Tom?
I think William James, he referred to that as the noetic sense of having an experience that's so real that it cannot be anything other than the reality, right? So you cannot describe it, but you have that experience that is so real, that sense of interconnectivity and symbiosis with everything going on around you, that there is no sense of I to be separated from all of that. So you have that sense of being the capacity for the universe, and that's so true to you through experience that you don't have to even bother explaining away or trying to argue with anyone about that, right? So that's, for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the shortcut, like psychedelics. They've been used, throughout the millennia by different groups from all societies in many ways, medicinal plants, especially, to really sort of, I don't know, I like to call it a shortcut. It's just another tool, right? It's just another tool that somehow has been placed upon this hierarchy of ways of accessing a sense of self. And that's the thing that kind of pisses me off when people start to talk about chemistry or start to talk about drugs as if they're good or bad. That all tools are there for us to be used as natural ways of finding meaning and finding a sense of self, and they always have been. So what's different today?
I mean, I'll call it a shortcut. To me, it just seems like
Oh, it is. Yeah,
the
no, don't get me wrong.
efficiency and directness of the tool um, just beats out other practices where maybe you'll never reach it. Maybe you have to spend 20 years to get a taste of it. Maybe it's totally dependent on how you're doing it and what you're developing within the practice that is nudging you towards it. But with psychedelics, it's like you really don't have a choice. It's you're gonna go there, and um, I don't know. I don't know why we feel like that's a bad thing to call it a, maybe because we think there's something unearned about doing something an easier way, or shortcut seems like cheating. Like, look at it objectively. It's a great tool, especially when put against other tools. Not to say that you shouldn't practice these other tools, or they're not valuable, but I don't have any shame in saying it's a it's a great method that's easier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's just a sign of this sort of the, post sort of industrial sort of work ethic society that everything has to be, sweat and blood has to be behind any sort of sense of achievement when it comes to sort of an enlightened experience, whereas like, man, we're over that time now. It's like everything now is at our disposal, AI and VR, they're right on our doorstep. And we're in this incredible like technological revolution now that it's like, why hang on to this sort of thread of this sort of hierarchy that we need to sort of, bust our balls in the ditches and trenches like our forefathers did just to try and
Yeah.
achieve some sort of sense of meaning, or, you know what I mean? Or of transcendence. It's like,
Yeah.
if people want to do that, great, good luck to them. And it's there for us. And it's totally, it's safe in most scenarios. And, it's not for everyone, but for those who really seek that and look for that, then great, I say.
Yeah, I even see people in the fitness realm who think they need to work out for 4 to 6 hours a day in order to get some sort of progression or goals. It's like, you don't need to do this to yourself. If there's an easier way, a more efficient way, why not do that? But they feel like they have to punish themselves. Same thing with food and everything. But Gavin made a good point. So what people talk about is altered states versus altered traits. So altered traits is something you gain from like a meditation practice. Altered states is like ingesting um, to have an experience. Kitty time.
Right.
But
Um,
Tom, I think you would agree with me that altered states can lead to altered traits and are very good. It's happened with me. That's the first thing that led me into all this, was an altered state. And then
mm.
I got into these practices of altering traits. So I think one can lead to another.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the whole integration thing, it's like, someone, I was listening to a guy today talking about ketamine therapy. And he was saying that the ratio that he works with, it's like 25% preparation, 25% actual chemical intervention with the actual substance ketamine, and then 50% is what the hell you do with it, right? So it's like the integration part of it. And that's such an important thing. It's like, you can, from my experience, the whole psychedelic experience itself, this ecstatic state that you find yourself in, it's purely a state that is going to allow you to actually convert that into some sort of meaningful trait, if you like, post experience, and then the more work you do with it, the actually less you need of the actual psychedelic ecstatic experience,
Yeah.
because the actual integration becomes so meaningful that you realize that, man, my day-to-day reality is extreme psychedelic state in itself. Just the gratefulness and gratitude that you have for being able to see, to being able to smell, being able to experience pheromones with someone, the girlfriend or whatever it is, that becomes psychedelic in itself. So yeah, in a way, it's a shortcut into knowing what we should already know in real day-to-day life, and that's just extreme gratitude for winning this fucking lottery ticket of life.
Yeah, and I would also say that and this is my experience, I don't know if you experience this, Tom, but you see it in all the John Hopkins studies, and a few studies actually, that one time psychedelic experience has a permanent lasting effect that changes their perception 10 years later, 20 years later. I've personally seen people in a one session deal with trauma or have insights that completely change them moving forward from then on. So I don't think that, of course, the state is not permanent, but you leaving, your perception, your awareness is totally altered after that. Like we said, altered traits. So that's something where you hear nothing can change with just one stimulus, one input, one session. With plant medicines, it's possible for permanent change after that.
Yeah, for sure. And again, some people, there's so many different avenues you can go. Some people looking for the therapeutic route and heavy experiences. Some of these plants as well, but for the therapeutic route. Or there's others who are, maybe I'll put myself in that camp as well, who are just so fascinated by the actual possibilities that we have of tapping into our deeper layers of consciousness. I mean, I read something the other day where we can process like our sort of waking reality. We can process like 120 like bits of information at a time, and maybe a conversation can take up half of that, whereas the subconscious is like capable of like, I think of this as Stealing Fire, actually, of Kotler's book. The unconscious
Millions.
mind is billions of bits
Yeah,
of information. Yeah. And when you're in the psychedelic realm, suddenly your computational powers become not just this 120 bit, they become like, they sort of open up, not to billions, but you see the possibility of what it is that we're capable of. And then that gives you that enormous incentive to actually bring that information and that experience back to your relationship, to your workspace, to your training field, to your cognitive exercises, whatever it is that you're doing. You just have such for me, it's just such an allure and such a passion to actually put this information to good use,
Yeah, it's amazing. That's like the Aldous Huxley doors of perception are opened, the floodgates are open, right? But it's funny because it shuts off the parts of the brain, especially the default mode network, where it's like time and sense of self and all this stuff that is there to kind of, all these things which allows to dissolve that boundary between you and all that information. I guess more on a side, like my experience. Are you there, Tom? You're breaking up a little bit for me. Oh, Melissa, if you need that, you need to come down to the Emptiness Project, Joshua Tree Project.
Yeah, if this tickles your fancy, then we're gonna get involved in the Emptiness Project, and I'll come to Peru as well in July. If you want to come down to Peru and experience some sacred plants of the Peruvian Andes, San Pedro, ayahuasca, maybe even the Bufo alvarius, the toad. Plenty of possibilities down there for some safe therapeutic intervention via the sacred plants.
I'm not doing the toad.
With me and DJ as the hosts, holding your hand, holding your bucket.
Oh man. But yeah, my first experience with psilocybin, I knew nothing about it. I ate a bunch of it, too much of it, or just the right amount of it. I was in a bad place at the time, a lot of bad decisions, a lot of bad habits. And it allowed me to step outside of myself and see everything I was doing objectively, to see the world around me. Like I had the I saw God moment, and it was everything, everywhere. And then when that went away, it's different. I remember being fascinated that it was different than marijuana, where marijuana, when you're not high anymore, oh, it's like, I'm not high anymore, it's over. Like that experience was gone. This, it's like everything I saw, it's like, I know it's still there. Like it didn't go away, if that makes sense. Like everything I saw stayed with me. The perceptions, the thoughts, everything. So from then on, I was like, made a 360, and I started really searching for things that were conforming to this experience or this reality that I saw. And there's a lot of growth attached to that. And still, it's sort of a compass for me, that feeling and experience I had. And I'm trying to grow towards that. But
Beautiful, man.
I don't know why I brought that up. Yeah, I feel like that had a lasting, permanent effect on me. Many people too.
We'll talk more about that, man. It's there's lots more to share about that. Some of our formative experiences. It's like I look forward to. Yeah, we can do some more chats on that. But I'll see you next week.
When are you going to talk about the toad?
Next, well, we'll see. We'll see. But I'll see you next week anyway. It's going to cut us off again here, DJ, in a minute. Gonna cut us off here again.
All right, brother. Good talking to you.
So I'll yeah, we'll catch up next week and we'll do some more research. Look forward to that.
Oh yeah. We're gonna go deep.
Yeah, man. Look forward to it.
Me too, bro. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll do it live next week. We'll do it over your way this time. Next week, same time probably.
I don't know if I'm comfortable being live on what we're about to do.
Don't worry, man. Just pretend you're a woman, and then you'll feel a lot more comfortable. Maybe. Download that algorithm.
Yeah, I'll transition in hyperspace.
I'll see you later, bro. Take care, yeah? Peace, man.
Peace.